welcome everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. It's been a minute. My name is Jason Johnson. I represent the WhyTry organization, and I am so excited for this panel that we have with us today. I'm going to introduce them all in a minute. But before we do that, I just want to welcome everybody that is in attendance. For those that have a history with us, you kind of know what these are about. For those that are newly joining us, let me give you just kind of a brief introduction on what these are and what we hope to come from them. We started this webinar series in about the second month of the pandemic. So our organization has been around for about 20 years. We have a social emotional learning and a resilience curriculum, and we've done work throughout the whole country, all 50 states, and about 23,000 different organizations. And when the pandemic hit, and every school had to close its doors and all of our events on our calendar canceled, we felt it was really important to stay connected to the friends and the network that we had made. And so we started doing these webinars as a way to stay connected with our friends. And then it really quickly blossomed out into this bigger thing where we started making new friends and people started showing up regularly to these. I think because we've had such great voices on that have really important and useful experience to share. And this thing kind of took on a life of its own. So we've carried these on through last year and all into this year as well. We typically take August and September off. It's kind of our busiest time of year where we're out in the schools doing professional development and working with the educators and mental health professionals throughout the country. And so it's tougher to do these in those 2 months. So this is our first one back since the new school year started for most everybody. And I'm thrilled. I got a little bit of butterflies coming back to do it, but I think it's in part because I'm so excited to be back with our friends that have been on. And so for the new people that are just joining us that haven't been to one before, welcome. We're so happy that you're here. We're excited to have you contribute in the chat. This is on a webinar link. So the panelists, the four of us that are panelists are all that you can see, but the chat tool kind of becomes its own place for ideas to be exchanged as well. So we hope you'll use that. One note on the chat, and then I'll get us into the heart of our material. If you look at your chat settings, like where you type a message, right above where you type in your message, there's a little drop-down menu that says to, and then that says who you're sharing your message with. We prefer it if you set that to everyone so that everybody can see your comment. Correct, Andrea, your cameras are not on. I can't see you. So if you'll change that to everyone, it will make it so that everyone can hear your comments. And a lot of what you have to say is just as important as what the panelists share. And so if it says it's only going to hosts and panelists, then the four of us are the only ones that can see it. And so we do prefer it if you set it to everyone. It makes I think it brings a really nice energy to the chat. So feel free to blow that up and say hi to everybody, introduce yourself, and then keep a dialogue going while we're talking. So with that, let me introduce our topic and our panelists. And what I'm going to do for this section is I'm going to pin it so that all of us are being shown at the same time. There we go. All right. So we should be able to see all of our panelists now at the same time. Got an incredible panel here, and I'm so excited for them to help welcome us back with some of their ideas and experience. Topic today that we're going to be covering is basically a welcome back and discussing how we can meet the resilience needs of our students and staff during this school year. For those that are asking, this is going to be recorded as well. So if you have to step away, we'll have a recording of it. Anyway, let me introduce our panelists now. This is obviously an important topic, and this is a really, I think, pivotal year as we're returning back. You know, the last couple of years have been so unusual, and I think this is going to be a really important pivotal year. So thrilled to be joined by three incredible educators. First off, We've got Dr. Keith Wilks. Dr. Wilks is the Assistant Superintendent of Support Services in the Rock Hill School District in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Also the Treasurer of the National Association of Pupil Services Administrators. You'll hear that come up again, this term NAPSA, because all three of our panelists actually represent NAPSA as well. He's an educator for 3 decades, continued to be a student in his own right, believes that every experience must be a learning experience, good, bad, or otherwise. We learn what we had to do or what not to do from every experience. His approach is systematic. It entails preflection, planning, implementation, assessment, reflection, and needed re-implementation. Had some incredible concepts that he's used as a trainer, as well as in education. Every experience as a teacher, school assistant principal, and middle and high school principal, high school executive director of student services has been in preparation for your current role, where you're supporting engagement and program support. Keith, we're so grateful to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Next, we have Jean Knaus, and I should have clarified. Did I say your last name right, Jean? I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Knaus.
Knaus. Oh yeah. My goodness. Okay, Jean Knaus. I apologize for that. Jean's the Director of Student Services for State College Area School District in State College, Pennsylvania. Jean has over 30 years of experience in education, including 11 years utilizing restorative practices, 7 as a restorative practices trainer. Prior to your position in State College Area School, you worked as a special education supervisor, high school principal, and special education teacher. Extensive experience with Chapter 14, Chapter 15, and Chapter 16. Currently, Jean supervises AEDY, counseling, nursing, homeschool visitor family outreach specialist, child accounting, and PIMS administration. And Jean works closely with community service providers, the PSU, campus community, and district staff to provide a full range of services. Jean, we're so happy you joined us. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
And I've gotten word, I'm working on it, that my great idea to pin it on myself. So my apologies. We'll just remove that and let Zoom do it the way it's supposed to. Next we have, make sure I got my notes right here, Larissa Henderson. Welcome back. Is this your 3rd time on, Larissa?
Yes, it is.
Well, welcome. You're welcome to the 3-time club. Dr. Henderson currently serves as the National Association of Pupil Services president. She's the director of Pupil Services in Oak Ridge School District in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Wears a lot of very different hats, from attendance, discipline, food services, foster care, homeless, migrant, immigrant, ELL, school nurses, court liaison, Title IX coordinator, Title VI, and Title III. She calls Pupil Services the customer service department for the school district. And she feels that the most rewarding aspect of her job is working with and helping students and their families. Her day changes hourly, and the change can be overwhelming, but she enjoys a good challenge every now and then. By the sounds of it, I would imagine you get your wish of getting a good challenge every now and again.
Yeah, I do. and then some.
Perfect. Well, welcome you 3. As I mentioned, my name is Jason Johnson. My background is I am a school psychologist. Came over to the WhyTry organization about 7 years ago. I oversee the training department and research and development, and I'm the lucky person that gets to moderate these webinars. So I want to just jump right into the content right now, and let's see where the conversation goes. So thank you again for being here, and let's set it up by just starting off. Tell us a little bit about what your current role is, what you've been working on for the last 1 to 2 years, and just kind of where your area of focus is right now. And let's go Keith, Jean, and Larissa.
Good afternoon, everyone. Definitely appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this afternoon. Most people ask, where is Rock Hill, South Carolina? Most people have heard of Charlotte, North Carolina. We are just across the state line, about 20 miles south of Charlotte, North Carolina. So if that gives you some geographic indication as to where we are. And I say that because Charlotte is a growing metropolitan area. You know, professional sports teams, a lot of people are moving into that area. A lot of people don't want to live in what they say is a blossoming big city, so they move south because we have an interstate that takes people in. And we have a lot of people who are in our area dealing with homelessness. We are, within my division of support services, we have nurses, we have a Department of Behavioral and Mental Health that was just developed last year. The only school district in the state that has a group of individuals who that is their major focus. That consists of a former director of exceptional student services. We have 9 behavioral, I mean, not behavioral, but we have 9 therapists that are employed by our district, and a service that provides additional services to our district. We have nursing services, and student services is under my division, which I was the executive director for 13 years in student services. And what we're seeing is, especially after the pandemic, the last year and a half or so, students who have had difficulties with making good decisions. And I'll just kind of lump it into that. Those are good decisions with peers, those are good decisions for their own health, and just trying to provide support, because when they're not making those good decisions, it's rubbing off on our faculty and staff who are also having issues in their homes. And so we have provided some services for our faculty and staff along the lines of being able to access call centers if they are having difficulty during the school day and after the school day, working with a university here in town. So that's a lot of our focus in our particular area. And I will leave it at that. We can come back to it at any point if you'd like.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith. Jean, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Sure. As director of student services, I was also the pandemic coordinator and the safety coordinator. So that was kind of gifted to me over the last 2 years. I would say prior to the pandemic, my biggest worry that kept me awake at night was students who were stay as long as they could at the school because they didn't want to go home. And then the pandemic hit, and knowing these students were stuck at home in a place that they didn't feel safe or comfortable or didn't like being. Those students are the ones now that are our primary focus. They're extreme cases now because they went without being in front of anyone virtually or even in person because they wouldn't show up and we couldn't go to the home. And so it came with all these levels of difficulty. So through that process, through the pandemic process, and then also with staff during that time, we spent a lot of time with listening circles because staff felt like a lot of things were done to them and they couldn't actually have a say in how things were done. And so now our focuses really are the mental health pieces, and what does that multi-tiered systems of support look like for students and staff? How do we provide that tier 1, 2, and 3 level support and understanding to meet their needs? Also, safety and security is a big priority right now. Threat assessments, awareness, and trainings. And then a personal and professional focus of mine, of course, is restorative practices. And I've been spending a great deal of time repairing relationships, repairing harm, and building communities again so that we have a safe place to go to share our concerns and have those conversations that we need to have to repair the harm.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to put a pin in that thought because we're going to come back. I'm going to have you talk a little bit more in a little bit on restorative practices. It's I think a really, really important piece of the puzzle that some people are aware of, but some may not be as well. Larissa, tell us what you've been up to and all the different hats you've been wearing.
Well, a bunch of different hats. The next time I come on one of these, I'm gonna have on some different hats every time so you can see. But some of the things that I deal with, I'm over the nurses, and we are fortunate. We're a small school district. We have 8 schools, and each school has a full-time nurse. So we're fortunate in that end. They're all RNs. I'm also the discipline hearing authority person. So when there's long-term suspensions out of school or so forth, those appeals come to me. I've seen a lot of homeless families more so this year than normal. And the state of Tennessee had some grant money, which I applied for last year, stretched it out over 2 years. So we used up part of it last year. And this year I went after the grant because it would allow me to house a family for 3 nights in a hotel. And sometimes I found out with our community resources, that's a straight shot into the next step instead of them having to sit out and wait if they know that they've been in a hotel and go from there. To seeing a lot of foster children come through. The thing there with the foster children, they can't find foster homes to put them in. So that's been a concern of ours as well. I was on what they call a best determination interview this morning with DCS. That was my second one this week. And usually I might have one a month. So you can see how those things are changing. We do not have a juvenile detention center in our area. The closest one is in Knoxville, which is about, I would say 25, 30 miles from us. But I am the detention center contact. So if one of my kids get in trouble and get sent to juvenile detention, which may be in Knoxville, I'm the contact. I'm the one that has to get all the paperwork together and all that stuff as well. Homebound comes through me as well. If there's children that are going to be placed on homebound for medical reasons. I am also the court liaison for juvenile court. That can be good because you get to know everybody in court and get to know a lot of the police officers. It can be bad because you walk straight through the detention. I mean, the metal detectors, and they don't stop you. They just say, "Come on in, doc." So it has this good traits and bad traits. I'm also over school nutrition to I share that with Aramark. Aramark is a contracted food service that we use. So they, by them being not an employee with us, they can't get into our student database. So any of those applications that come through, the infamous PEBT cards that we had to try to get out, those were all coming through my department. I do the attendance, believe it or not. I'm also the district level DCS referral contact. So if a school or a teacher makes a referral to DCS, they have to send a copy of that referral to me. So I get that. I also do coordinated health as well. And she was, I think we talked about that on the first webinar that I did. We had the mental health stress bags and stuff that we developed and everything. And I'm part of a community resource group. So what that means is the community resources within the area of Oak Ridge, we're getting ready to have a meeting on the 30th. We meet and we try to see who's doing what and try to share resources. So that way we're not double dipping or doing the same thing twice. So those are just some of the hats I thought about when everybody else was talking. It changes daily. Also, it may be if I see the superintendent come in and stick his head in, that means I've either done something or he wants me to do something. So, and usually it's the latter. But yeah, and I have been in Oak Ridge schools since 2002. I was with Knox County Schools, which is right next door to us, for about 26 years with them. So I've got a lot of years in education right now. Okay, we can't hear you.
Rookie mistake. It's been, geez, I go on the road for 2 months. I forget how to use a microphone on Zoom. This is impressive. I don't know that I've ever had 3 people that have more collective responsibility than 3 of you. And so I'm excited because this brings a lot of experience together. And this is important stuff. So I want to continue the discussion kind of around some of those specific challenges. And here's kind of a 2-parter for you. Okay. If you want to just talk a little bit more about some of the specific challenges that are occupying your attention that you feel like are kind of specific to this year. And then the other thing that I think might be helpful is just if you could briefly describe kind of your personal approach to trying to bring balance to both supporting your individual students that have some of those unique challenges, as well as supporting an overall resilient culture in your schools, both for students and staff. Let's start with Jean. We'll go Jean, Larissa, and then Keith.
Sure. I'm going to start first with a community focus and then move into students and staff. And so some of the things we're finding within our families is that we can't meet their needs, right? In the sense of money and food and shelter and stuff like that. So I just kind of put this out there real quickly. One of the things we did at the beginning of the pandemic is we opened up a fund through our foundation, and families who wanted to donate, we were asking for needs assessment, who has needs. We also asked then, who would like to give, because a lot of people say, I don't have needs, but I want to give. And our community gave over $106,000, and we were able to use that for credit cards and to buy cards for our families to use it at the giant markets or the Wise markets or anything like that. So that's something that we're still moving forward with, and our foundation has still raised money. We raised $73,000 this year, and we just are moving forward and helping to continue to support them. And there's no barriers. They fill out a needs assessment, we meet with them, and we help them with that process. And we also hook them up to agencies outside. So that's one of the things that's, I think, pretty unique about our area right now and what we're doing. But with students, of course, we're seeing the behavior needs and schools feeling safe and, back in school, and with the masks and the unmasks and all that thing, health and everything with mental health. We've hired 3 mental health clinicians over the past year. We have a nice mental health program now that we have up and running, where students are referred to these services. And then for our staff, same thing. And when I kind of gave a little bit of this, when I'll talk a little bit more about restorative practices, is 2 things that really hit close to home for me in this area is, the fundamental hypothesis of restorative practices that human beings are happier, more cooperative and productive when those in positions of authority do things with them rather than to them or for them. And through the entire pandemic, we did things to people, right? We continually did that. We didn't have a choice. We had to make decisions fast, and we had to make them, right away, and they were not popular decisions. And then treating fairly, like a lot of people felt that they weren't treated fairly. And when we talk about fair process, we talk about engagement, explanation, and expectation clarity. And if one of those 3 things weren't happened in a situation, you probably weren't treated fairly. You weren't engaged in the process, or it wasn't explained why you moved forward in a different way, or you didn't know what the expectations were moving forward. And I would say in the pandemic, the expectation clarity was there. Everyone knew exactly what they had to do, right? They had to wear masks, they had a physical distance, they had to get on, they had to have a hybrid model, they had all that, but they didn't know why, and they didn't understand the reasoning because we had to make those decisions so quickly. So what we're doing and what we started to do is we started doing restorative circles within our schools to really repair this harm. We started with our administrative team, and we asked questions like, what was the hardest thing for you? How did that impact your family? And what do you need to move forward? And one of the things we found out through this process was that those that had to work remotely because of having some high special needs that they couldn't be around others had a really difficult time working away, and they felt like they worked harder because they felt like they had to prove themselves. So that was something interesting that came out of that. But what we were really good about doing on the front end of these conferences was really owning our mistakes and our behavior, owning that we didn't treat you fairly, owning that we didn't do this with you. And now what do we need to do to repair that? What do you need to have happen to move forward to make this right? After we did this with the administrative team, which was pretty powerful. We had tears, even the superintendent, like it was very powerful. We then had the principals do it in each of their buildings, and there's 12 buildings in our district and 7,000 students. And they did it with their teachers, and the teachers did it with their students. So we were really trying to get at that place where, we understand this was hard. We want to recognize this was hard and give them a safe place to talk through that, and then to give them ideas and give us ideas of what they need to move forward and how can we do that. And then when we think of our highest challenging, even with students and staff, we really looked at our multi-tiered systems of support and said, what does everybody need? Let's deal that tier 1. Everybody needs this, every staff, every student, and let's give that to them. And then for the higher challenging cases, what do we put in there as tier 2 and tier 2 and tier 3? And what can we give them more of, something that they need? So really trying to meet everybody's needs and where they are.
That is awesome. I don't want to distract, but I've got goosebumps. I'm writing notes. The act of compassionate listening from a position of authority, it really is a show of humility, and it's really, really powerful. I want to pick your brain more outside of the webinar on this, because this is really cool. Let's keep it going. Larissa, talk a little bit about kind of how you're doing that balancing act specific to some of your challenges this year.
Okay, and some of what Jeannie said is what I have been working on, not just, well, it was probably, we started right when COVID hit in the spring of 2020, all the way through, but being a support for the families and working with them, not against them. So I found out with a lot of our homeless families, and I would tell the staff, if you even suspect homelessness, have them come see me. They're more comfortable speaking with one person and you listen and not being derogatory or demeaning than sharing their story 3 or 4 times. So, and then I will get back to the schools and kind of go from there and say, this is something I think we can help them with, and kind of go from there, give them some resources within the community, and go from there. We have a lot of our churches that will do free meals on different nights of the week. So we make sure we get that information out to them as well. Also, just being a good listener. I had an open door policy as an administrator. It has not stopped even since I've gotten at the district level. Now, as far as that can be a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing, because then you're here to 8 o'clock because you want to try to meet everybody's needs and kind of go from there. And I'm thinking, I'm working around their schedule, not the other way around. Because a lot of these people work and can't get off until late, and going from there with them as well. But we have seen our homeless population increase. So I have one hotel that I have partnered with. The grant that I spoke about earlier will allow me to pay for 3 nights of housing at a hotel. And then I get with Torch, who is our community person that looks for low rent housing and so forth. So it gets them a straight shot into them. But, and when they go in, I've got everything set up. All I have to do is call the manager at the hotel, give them my name, and they get everything set up. And so there's no private questions to ask of the family. They've got a safe place to stay. If they need something to eat, where the hotel is located, there are like 2 different restaurants close to them, including a Crystal restaurant. There's a grocery store across the street. They get gift cards if they need to go get food, that kind of thing, for gas as well. So just kind of being there with them. And I think for the staff, we are still doing things for staff as well, because we don't want to forget our staff. I will tell you that our school board recently approved at their last board meeting for the high school to have a bowling team at the high school level. The sponsor was sitting next to me, so the principal was behind me, and so he said, okay, you got your bowling league. He said, now we need to look at fundraising. I said, do a staff versus the kids. You talking about a fundraiser? I said, now the staff may need an extra day off, but that would be a person draw, community draw, but it would help on that end, and kind of go from there. I will tell you too, we already have 5 families from the Ukraine that came in. And so I have been involved in that. And you haven't, in Tennessee, you have to have your immunizations in the Tennessee database. So my nurse coordinator and myself have been trained to do that, which is a fast track into getting these kids into school. But it's hard to, if it's in Spanish, I have a translator in my department. She can help us with that. But it's hard to read Ukrainian information. So we tried Google Translate, and whatever the Ukrainian language was translated straight into Russian when nobody in my office reads Russian. So we had to call our health department. So we have formed a bit stronger partnership with them on that end. But as far as staff, we set up clinics. We set up the COVID clinics for them. We're getting ready to do flu clinics. We also did some for kids that could get the immunizations and go from there. And I'm trying to fast track them in instead of having them sit out and wait as best we can. So I think that works. Yeah, I think that works. I know somebody put in the chat, most states give 30 days. 30 days can be a long time sitting out of school if you don't have immunizations. Tennessee requires them to have immunizations. If we can put those immunizations in and let them know what they're missing and then call the health department and get a appointment set up right then. And Madison, my nurse, who's going to be at the NAPSA meeting, the conference in October, she's one of the speakers. We have been able to set families up at the same time. So families, if they have 3 or 4 kids, don't have to make 3 or 4 different appointments. We do family appointments. So we've done a lot of things like that to help with our children as well coming in, and also with the adults, trying to help them if they need jobs, trying to get, steer them in the right way and kind of go from there. It's been hard on some of these families coming in because they've gone through a lot of things, and just having somebody that's compassionate and just listening and not being very judgmental as they tell their stories.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. It's so many moving pieces to coordinate, but it makes the difference. And I love hearing how you advocate for each kid, even though you're doing this at a macro level. Keith, tell us a little bit about some of your along that same line, some of your specific challenges right now, and how you're doing that balancing act of supporting individual students, but also trying to contribute to an overall culture of resilience for your staff and your students.
Well, I guess I'll start off with the oldest part for all of us right now, if we want to call it old, and that's COVID process and COVID processes. As I said, the nurses are with them in our division. And to give you some perspective, I think my school district is a little larger than Jeannie's and Larissa's.
Yeah.
We have 24 schools, about 16,500 students. In our county, we have 4 distinct school districts with 4 superintendents, 4 school boards, which a lot of people in other states go, huh? But we have 4 distinct school districts, and ours is now the 2nd largest. Fort Mill School District, which is closest to Charlotte, they surpassed us last year at the end of the year. So they're a couple of hundred students larger than ours. And so one of the things that we have worked on very diligently is to ensure that we have good communication, and we have improved that to parents as far as process. If they think their child may be positive with COVID, we're offering and I know most people did, the testing. We had testing at all of our schools. We also had another location where faculty, staff, and students could go to be tested. We had 3 schools that closed right in the middle of COVID. Our board voted to close 3 of our elementary schools, and we consolidated those schools, which afterwards ended up causing some overcrowding some places. But those 3 nurses who were there, we did not get rid of those positions. They became supervisor nurses for the school district because we needed those to be sometime traveling nurses, but a lot of times to help work with the COVID issues. And so they have really provided a lot of great support there. We have a protocol that some people may be familiar with. It's called the PREPARE protocol, and it's for school crisis response. This was developed by a group of school psychologists in Colorado in response to Columbine. They were called into Columbine to work with the students and the staff, and realized that there was nothing that was in place that they could do systematically with an entire school. And we have been using this protocol now for, we're in our 7th year. Previously, I was a trainer, but in my new position, I've not been able to do that. But if you'd like more information, I can send you a brochure. It is outstanding. It can work for a class who may have had their class turtle to pass away if they've never experienced the loss. And it could work for someone who, a school who has lost a teacher or a student suddenly, or if it was, something that was long over a period of time. It's a protocol that we have bought into and has saved us so many times as recently as last week. And I'll talk about that very briefly.
What was the name of that program again?
It's called Prepare. And it's an acronym, of course, that's what we do in education, but it's called the Prepare Protocol, Prepare School Crisis Prevention and Intervention Curriculum. And it is the National Association of School Psychologists are actually they back this program and actually offer the program through that particular group. Several years ago, we had Dr. Melissa Reeves present at our, she presented at our national conference for NAPSA, and she at that time was the president of NAPSA, of NAPS, and I always put NAPSA and NAS for the National Association of School Psychologists, and she's one of the principal writers for that program. Again, I can send you a link. I can put a link in if anybody.
Yeah, and by the way,
very much. Somebody
we're gonna.
Somebody did.
Oh, that's Mark. Mark's the greatest Zoom chat point guard of all time. You could say he racks up assists.
Yes.
We're also going to put up email addresses for our panelists. I know a lot of ideas are going around, and so we will at the end put up email addresses for any of you that want to reach out and follow up on any of these. Sorry to cut you off, Keith.
Oh, no. So looking at what we're doing and I guess looking at what we're doing, look what we're faced with on a district level, and then what we have in place and are working to put in place to ensure up the issues as they may occur. One of the things, risk to self and risk to others training. Some people call the risk to others threat assessment training. We refer to it as risk to others or threat assessment training. We have a new version of that that's going to be offered next month for all of our administrators because the previous training that we did 3 years ago did not have as much social media information in it. And this one is an update, just like Prepare. There's a new version of Prepare that's out there that talks about the social media aspect of it. We have kind of switching gears. We have an educational foundation in our district that is a separate 501c3 entity that raises money for our educators. I won't say teachers, it's teachers, counselors. I've received a grant. I'm writing another grant in just a few weeks, but we can put in for grants to support things that are outside of the monies that the school district may have. And our last year, they celebrated giving out over $1 million in the time that they've been in existence in grants to our educators. And I tell you that because they support a program called Back to Pack. Back to Pack is where we pack food for students, and many districts have this, but our education foundation is actually the one who supports and purchases that food for students. Over 800 students per week last year received food over the week to eat over the weekend. We have developed a relationship with an organization called Second Harvest out of Charlotte to provide mobile pantries. And what they do is they pull up a huge box truck at a school, and they bring out pallets of food, and we have volunteers to come in, pack the food, and it's a drive-through. So families drive through. We ask, how many families are you picking up for? If they say 2 families, then they may get 3 bags of food, and that includes meats, vegetables, fresh vegetables, canned goods, enough to do usually 3 to 4 meals for each of those families, and they drive away with it. But that has been very, very popular. Last spring, we did 10. Last fall, we did 10. And at each of those, we served between 250 and 350 families each. We did those at most of our schools that are Title I schools. And so we already know that that's where families are that are in need. So that has been extremely successful. been doing it for about 4 years now. It's changed because of COVID, and this was one of the good things. We did have people coming into the school, packing the food, helping them take it out. Drive-through method is so much better. I mean, it has been phenomenal, and it is a great. I volunteered 3 or 4 times last year. Great opportunities to meet some great families. The unfortunate piece I'll get to now is we have students who are making not the best decisions. Title IX, I'm the Title IX coordinator for the school district. That in itself can be a full-time job, which I have learned just this week. Unfortunately, we've had some elementary school students make some bad decisions, and I will be pretty inundated. Well, right now, when I get off this call, I'll be involved in contacting more parents to give them that first line of, this is what Title IX is. This is what it means. You have a chance to read over the information, but what we're finding is our school district is probably in the last 3 years has become a majority minority school district. We have about 41% African American and 41% white, and other has now started to take over with a large population of Hispanic. Last time I heard, though, we had 23 different languages being spoken in our school district as the home language. So being able to communicate with those families, and I took French in high school and college, prayed my way through it, and the only thing I remember is je ne parle pas français, which means I do not speak French. But I will have to find a way to communicate with a couple of families, what I've already been told through this process. We will have Title IX as one of our focuses in our conference this year. We have a couple of agencies that I've worked with who are going to be supporters of our conference. If this is something that you all have not experienced in your school district, please let me know where you are and if you have an application. Because if you haven't experienced that, it's coming. This is something that's new because the current laws went into place August 15th, 2020, and it changed everything that we're having to do. And we're finding that there are some school districts who have not made those changes and have gotten behind the 8 ball in what has to be done, and it's caused some problems. When I took over this position in November of 2020, I kind of immersed myself and have immersed myself several times in trainings to make sure that I stay up on it. And the other unfortunate thing is we've had some students who have made some poor decisions and brought weapons to school last week in our 3rd week of school. And so the great thing about the experience was how our administrators, our teachers, and our students really stepped up and provided support for each other, and students were there to let us know that these issues existed. No one was hurt, no one was threatened. We were able to mitigate the issues without any huge problems, but it goes back to what kind of culture has been built in those schools for those students to be able to feel safe coming to adults to let them know. And that, I think everybody who has been in education knows that that's the case. But we have things in place. We have tip lines, we have hotlines, we have opportunities for guidance counselors. In our elementary schools, we have a position we call BMAs, which is Behavioral Management Assistant. And those BMAs work with students who have exhibited transition issues or problems that they may be having with peers or with themselves. They do check-ins with these students. They have small groups. They're not certified positions. In our high schools, we named them CMAs, which is a Crisis Management Assistant, because we didn't want behavior management. They have crisis, middle school and high school. And so they're doing some of the same things, and we're seeing they were only put in place in the spring of this past year, spring of 2022. And we got some feedback at the end of the year, and it was phenomenal. The schools were like, wow, this one person has made a difference with some of our high flyers at all levels. So those are some of the things that we put in place. And we did that because we knew with students being at home for 12 to 18 months and not necessarily being around people, that there were going to be issues. We tried to be as proactive as possible. Our ESSER funds paid for some of these positions, so they may be running out later, but we also have we also have built some of this into our budget for the school district.
Nice, thank you. So what I want to do now, I know you all have a ton of additional strategies. So I want to try to do like a kind of around the horn. And each time I come back to you, I want to have you just share one either systemic strategy or strategy that an individual educator could use in their own classroom or office to help contribute to that resilient culture that we're trying to help foster this year. I'm going to make one request, and the request is that, Jean, on this first go round, I really would be interested in having you talk about restorative practices as a strategy. And in fact, let's just start there. Let's keep the same order. Let's go Jean, Larissa, Keith, and let's just share one strategy at a time and see how many rounds we can get through, because I know people are always so anxious for the strategies, the ideas on this, and there's already been a ton that's shared. So Jean, if you don't mind, talk a little bit more about restorative practices.
Sure. And so basically what we want to do is we want to build a community, and we need to start off with getting to know you and building into more capacity to talk about some of those more intimate personal difficulties, repairing harm. When we build a community, we can maximize positivity, minimize negativity, and freely express emotions. And if we do circles to do this, to build this capacity within classrooms, we give students a space to share. If we're giving students a space to share and it's a ritual by which they do it, the science behind this is that the emotional upheaval and the behaviors will decrease because we're addressing the harm before it gets to a place where it needs to be referred to the office or be a disciplinary matter. In addition, we also take that disciplinary matter, instead of expelling and suspending, kids come back into the classroom, they're back in. We're really working, we revamped our handbook, and we have a restorative handbook this year, and we're working on reintegrative shame and separating the deed from the doer. So what you did was not appropriate, but you're still a good person. And we need to bring you back into community. And how do we do that, right? And so to repair that harm, we need to bring those that were impacted by that behavior and repair that, so that person is accepted back into the community instead of going down the track of, municipal processes, court cases, and stuff like that. So we're really focusing on that, building that community, building those relationships. When we think about the relationships in our life that had an impact on us, I'll use Christian Moore's example of Mama Jackson, right? The high support, high control, right? She really gave him limits and consequences and high expectations with love and nurturing and understanding. And that's what we want. We want high support, high control, which puts you in that with box and doing things with people. If you're high in control and you're not high in support, you're doing things to people. And if you're high in support and low in control, you're doing things for people. If you're low in control and low in support, you're not even present. You're not there at all. You're not contributing to a positive environment. So we really talk about doing things in the with box and treating people fairly, going through that reintegrative shame, managing and building communities, having those relationships that are solid. Because when we think about the kids who are, even anyone who have something in common with their struggles, our most challenging constituents, whether they're students or staff, those students, we think of the one thing that they're missing, and it's probably a strong relationship. And we could think of people that have impacted our life, or we can think of students whose life we've impacted, that we've gave them that process, that Christian Moore Avenue, right? That high support, high control. I love you. You're messing up, but we're going to fix this, and I'm going to be there with you to help you get through that. So that's really the mentality we've been trying to really embed within our community. And it's something that I feel those that have embraced it have really seen the results of it. It's been hard because we started training right before the pandemic. The pandemic then kind of fragmented that process. And so now we're getting back on track to try to remember those processes and get back into the rhythm of doing things with people, treating people fairly, and reintegrating that shame.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm just going to throw out a plug. We're going to do a future webinar on restorative practices because there is a formal model. Jean is actually a trainer for it, or has been. Are you currently still?
Yes.
So
yes.
if you're interested in this model, it's very, very powerful. Reach out to her and find out more. It's one of the most powerful things I've witnessed and been a part of. It lines up really nicely with our WhyTry concept of surrendering the one up. They're very complementary. Let's keep it moving. Larissa, give us a strategy for either a systemic improvement or an individual support.
Okay, well, at the system level, we have a coordinated school health person. And one of the things that we found out with Marcia, some of the things that she does as far as coordinated health, we have partnered up with our nurses as well as with health teachers in the buildings. So in the elementary schools, we had set up de-stressing corners. So there are things in those corners if the children are kind of off task or that off behavior, they can go over and there may be balls they squeeze or maybe little soft things for them. Those are some of the things that she set up in the elementary schools, and she has them available for middle schools because in Oak Ridge, our 5th graders are in our middle school. So to me, 5th graders are still elementary, but you still have to deal with those. And that's a way to kind of diffuse that negative behavior sometimes. And go from there as well. Also, what we've tried to do is make the community more aware of some of the things that we are seeing and ask for support for different items. So one of the things I can tell you for the de-stressing circles, she put out a list, and so we had gotten some money from the Education Foundation. We had that set up like Keith does in his district. We also had sorority and fraternity involvement. Where they would also help with different things like that. And on the staff side, teachers are just like big kids. They need some special things too. So every month she teams up with our teaching and learning administrative assistant. This is my coordinated school health, and they have special treat days. They know the days, the teachers don't know the days. So they may get little things in the mail, there may be things in the teacher center. The things for them, send out positive notes, just something to kind of let them know, hey, we know what's going on and go from there. A kind note goes a long way. You would be surprised. I did that as a principal. Make sure every child in my building at least got a postcard from me once. And I ran into a former student many, many years ago who was a young adult, and his mom told me, he was in, I think, technical school, and she said, tell her. And so I said, well, what are you doing? And he was trying to tell me. She said, no, I want you to tell her. So he pulls out his wallet. The postcard I sent him in 3rd grade, this kid was now 25, he still had.
Wow.
Yeah. So that made I still get cold chills when I talk about that. But I think just doing those little things, going out of the way kinds of things, to make let people know that they're important, that comes, and same thing for the parents. I do the truancy as well. So what I'm going to do this year with our truancy, as we start tracking those that come to a meeting, the ones that come to the first meeting, I'm going to get my administrative assistant. We're going to start looking at those. If those kids' attendance improves, then I'm going to send out something to that parent. And I'm gonna send out something to that child. This is a team, and go from there. Because I'm like Jeannie and Keith, COVID did a lot of things to mess up socialization, not only with our families, but also with our staff. I know we had to work from home. I do not like working from home. And after a while, you got tired of sitting there watching Andy Mayberry. There wasn't any good movies on. So, I got out and started walking. A lot of families didn't have that luxury of doing things like just the simple things that we used to do. So doing those kinds of things and letting people know they're appreciated. So I think some of these things are kind of de-stressed. We even have a coordinated school health fair. And we have the staff come through, and the parents can also come through with their kids. So we try to open it up this year we have a little community run called the Turkey Trot. It's usually between Halloween and Thanksgiving. And we had just for the kids. This year, we're going to add a staff version to it. So I think when the kids see the teachers getting out there having fun, the parents, it kind of breaks some of that. And
That's
going
awesome.
back. Yeah, you're getting exercise. You may be humiliated if you're coming in after kindergarten, but you've run that race. So we try to think out of the box with some of these
Really
things.
good, really good.
Yeah.
Keith, give us a strategy.
Oh, you can't hear me. I thought I muted myself. I'm going to just hit on a couple of things that Larissa and Jenny said. Restorative practices. I am not a trainer, but that is in my division. Yeah. We have several, my executive director of student services is a trainer. Also my director of behavior and mental health, she's a trainer. And all of our in-district mental health therapists are part of the restorative practices team, in addition to several guidance counselors and school psychologists within the district. PBIS, we have been a PBIS district probably 3 years prior to COVID. Of course, COVID put a monkey wrench in everything. We, even being in 3 years, we had some schools who were not fully into the practice, but we've had changes in administration and we've had more people who have requested PBIS. So we're going to be doing that and working all of that in with our MTSS system. What I wanted to focus on was, I kind of mentioned it, I think in one of the chats, we developed a day treatment program year before last, for elementary schools. Last year, we added middle school. And this year, our intent was to offer the opportunity for high school. And day treatment is different for different people, different districts. Our day treatment is looking at those students who have a diagnosed mental health disability. And they are some of those students who, some of them have 504s and not IEPs, but they have had difficulty in class. And so they were the high flyers. They're the ones who have been tearing up classes. You know that there is an issue. Our day treatment program has been helping them with their transition skills to get back into the regular classroom. It is a limited amount of time. This is not a place that they go and they stay. It's not a place which is a misunderstanding that they're going to go and be fixed and come back. It is all about what we've tried to describe it to our principals, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, is just like if you had somebody who's a diabetic, you're teaching them how to use the insulin to help work with their diabetes. And so there are going to be some good days, there are going to be some bad days. And so we're trying to work with these students and transition program as well. We have been able to put two regular ed teachers, a special ed teacher, a director who also does some teaching, and four teacher assistants in those classes, because those students, as you well know, when working with them, it can be very difficult. We have seen some successes. I'm not going to sit here and say all of them have been successes, but we have seen some successes this past year, the past 2 years, and we're working with it this year. Unfortunately, we were not able to put our high school program in place, but what we are doing is working with the other 3 school districts in our county, and we may be developing a day treatment program for our county, working with the other 3 school districts. So having a hub where students from all of those counties can actually come for that day treatment experience and the transition back. So we're looking at how that can actually work out. And so that's been that has been one thing that we have found some success for students a lot of times whose parents are looking at trying to get residential placements. And some of these students are actually coming back from residential placements. Some of these are students that we have found that have had some extensive self-harm to themselves and not necessarily been placed, but this has been a transitional program for them. And one last thing, Larissa was talking about the turkey trot. We're looking at the reindeer romp, and my division, they don't know about it yet, but we're gonna get ready for a couch to 5K program and do, and it's a 5K program that our Girls on the Run participate in December called the Reindeer Romp in our town. And so that's just trying to, as many ways as we can, get some things for our staff. Do I have 30 more seconds? I want to talk about Wellness Wednesday. Wellness Wednesday is something that we started about 3 years ago with our director of mental health, behavioral and mental health, loves jazzercise. And so she brought jazzercise to us. Over the summer, we added yoga. And I went in one day and said, I forgot my bowl. I hear that you're serving yogurt here. And, everybody got a laugh. And I sweated more than I ever have in my life. It was my first time doing yoga. But since then, in the last 2 weeks, I've actually done it 8 times in the last 2 weeks at home. But I tell you that because we're expanding Wellness Wednesday, not just for doing things that are physical. We're going to do a paint and pop because we can't have paint and sips.
That's right.
We're looking at doing some sculpture, finding things, outlets for our teachers and faculty and staff to do to help with their wellness.
Right.
And I'll be quiet.
That is awesome. We're gonna go just a couple minutes over. I wanna get 2 quick things in. Number one, Gina, I want to give you a chance to speak a little more freely because I picked your last strategy. Do you have one bonus strategy you want to lay on us real quickly that you didn't get to mention?
I'll just say one of the things we're doing for our staff is we did, I don't know if you've heard Together All, and it's an online platform that our staff can get on, and it's anonymous, and it allows them to go in and have connect with people who are struggling in the same level, understanding where they are, researching the understanding. It's observed 24 hours by psychologists, so they have opportunity to speak to someone if they need to. So there's kind of a hidden way of getting that extra mental health support in for staff. So
awesome. I'm glad you got that in. That's really, really important. And that kind of leads me in. I'm going to mix up. We had a pre-call and we talked about, I'm going to throw you all a curveball. I'm going to hit you with a different question than we talked about. For the final question, and I'm going to put up contact information to Loop. Here's what I want you to respond to for the final question. What would you say to an educator on here right now that may be feeling overwhelmed and nervous about this upcoming year? The last 2 years have really taken a lot out of them. What would you say to any educator that is just feeling nervous and overwhelmed about this year? And then as you do it, Larissa, I also want you to put in a plug for the upcoming NAPSA conference and let everybody know that they're invited to participate, and maybe mention a little bit about what NAPSA is. Let's just keep the same order. Let's go Jean, Keith, and Larissa on that. And then we'll wrap it up. And in the meantime, we've got contact information looping. So if anybody wants to reach out to any of our panelists, you've got email addresses there.
Okay. There's hope. I think there's a lot of hope. I think we can see it in our kids, in our students, in our faculty, in our staff. I think we need to find that space that we feel safe in. I think it's okay to get mental health therapy if you need it, to talk to someone that can listen and understand and help you through that process. I also think there's a way to find the struggles you've gone through and be resilient about them, use them for strength and power, and moving forward, and really looking to a support system, making sure you have a good support system. And if you don't, how can you access that or find ways to do that? And usually human resources have, a space for that to occur. But I would kind of remember why we went into this field, what brought us here. We passion for love for kids, for learning, and keep that in your heart and know that there's hope and that things will get better.
Thank you. Keith.
Sure.
I did mute myself that time. I'm going to go back to something that Jason mentioned at the very beginning when he was reading my bio, and that is every experience is a learning experience, good, bad, or otherwise. And quite often, if we truly reflect, we learn the most when that's been a bad experience, because we learn what we could have done differently, what was done that made the situation better. And so I go back to reflection. We need to use that diligently as we're going through situations and opportunities. And I know that Jason read a word that he probably thought was a mistype, and it said preflection. That's a Wilks word. When I was a math teacher, I made up my own words. That's a Wilks word. And what preflection is, I call it powerful reflection. And preflection is just actually reflecting before you go into something. So all those things that you've learned before, when you're faced with a situation, ask yourself, what do I know about this? And you put those things and say, okay, I can use these things, but there's some things that I don't know about this as well. So doing that little bit of time to do some preflection on the things that you've learned previously. And we're built for this. We went into this for a reason. It's not going to be easy. We know that, but it is so rewarding to be able to see the postcards that a 25-year-old is pulling out of his wallet.
That's right.
Those are the things that bring us through it.
Mm-hmm. That's
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Larissa, what would you say? What would you say to that educator? And then I'm going to have you tell us a little bit more about the NAPSA conference.
Okay, to that educator, we all have been there. Education is not an easy process, but it's very rewarding process. I would say to you to find your release outlet. What makes you feel good? What makes you laugh? What makes you think on a different edge than the negativity all the time? I know when you came onto this webinar, there was some music playing. Well, I tell you what, I love Motown. So if I have one of those down days, I've got Motown going on. I always tell kids when I have a discipline hearing and they say, I just have a bad day. I say, can you think of something that makes you feel better? And they can. I said, well, let me tell you, when I've had a bad day, this is what I do. I get in my car and I said, now I have Sirius XM. So I hit Soul Town, get all the old hits, go buy me a cone of ice cream, and I'll drive until I eat the ice cream up. And if you don't feel good doing that kind of thing, and what we have tried to do here in my office is like once a week, I would try to teach them a line dance. You'd be surprised how many people don't know how to line dance, but it's funny and everybody's laughing because nobody's an expert at it, but you're having fun and you're releasing tension at the same time. The other thing I think too that works, go back to your childhood, get a coloring book and color. You would be surprised how the stress goes away and you have learned to stay in the lines. So if you don't want to stay in the lines, don't stay in the lines, but you color, get that relaxing. And then journaling. I have started a book. I said I was going to write a book and I've started. I've got a title and the title is I Can't Make This Stuff Up. That's the title. And then each chapter is going to be about something that I've had to deal with.
Nice.
Yeah, and I've already told my school board attorney about it. And she said, I want your first copy. I want it signed. And I said, well, I'm gonna have to think about changing the names of the people in it because I don't want to be sued. And she said, Dr. H, they would be so happy that you used their name. They wouldn't know you were talking about them. So anyway, but that I got another chapter from my book. That's the way I look at this.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't make it. I love it from Mark. The other thing, there was a book that I got for the staff when I first came to Oak Ridge at Woodland Elementary, and it was called Almost Burned Up, but just crispy around the edges. That's the title of the book. very easy to read, but it's about a teacher who was at that quitting point, and she has a eye-opening experience in a grocery store. And she feels like, yeah, I am being fulfilled in what I'm doing. And I ordered a copy for every staff member, and there's pages where you make little notes. And we did a staff development on that. We had like a retreat kind of thing, and they could share if they wanted to, but it was a whole different take. Yeah, there it is. Not quite burned out, but crispy around the edges. It is a good read.
I'm in just on the title alone. Hey,
it is
Larissa,
good.
tell us quickly about the upcoming NAPSA conference,
NAPSA?
who that's
Okay.
for and who NAPSA is for. You're all affiliated with NAPSA. You've all become a really great friend and ally for us. We really respect what you're doing, and I want to make sure you get a chance to plug the good work that you represent.
Thank you. Yes, I am the current president of NAPSA, and that's the National Organization of Pupil Service Administrators. A lot of people don't know what we do. We wear so many different hats, we had to come up with a different acronym for what we do. And the conference is going to be held in Pittsburgh this year. And the dates are October 16th through 18th. You can get on the NAPSA website you can still register. We're going to do an in-person version as well as a hybrid version. So if you can't come in person, you can still sign up to attend. A lot of the speakers that you probably have heard and don't know that well will be speaking. We always have an attorney coming in talking about Title IX. As Keith said, all that, I mean, the legislators change all these laws and they don't ask the people in the trenches about it, but we have to deal with it. So that would be a good way to do that and to become a member. We have a newsletter that goes out called the NAPSA Tidbits. There are strategies in that for administrators and everything. And what I have done in my district is I have sent in a institutional membership, and so we can have up to, I think it's 5 or 6 people on that. And so that way it kind of branch people out and see, but you've got nurses, we have attorneys, we have different specialists coming in. So you get to see some of America's finest at that conference. And WhyTry is one of our proud supporters too. We have been working with them for a long time as well. So I hope to see you there. I will be there in person. And we will have little sessions where you just sit down and talk. We're trying to plan something fun that we can get together as a group and go out to dinner and do things. So I would invite you to come. You will really thoroughly enjoy yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to put in my additional plug for that. The website is there on that page, napsa.com. You can see registration information there. I'm also going to answer the question that I set you all up with. What would you say to an educator that's feeling overwhelmed? I'm going to speak right now more as a parent than as an educator myself. I've got 5 children. My oldest just graduated last year, graduated high school. This year I have 2 in high school, 2 in elementary school. What I'm going to say is you are making more of a difference than you think you are. And I can promise you that as a parent, because I've seen it in my own kiddo's life. I'll try not to get emotional talking about it, but you know, for the rest of their lives, my kids are going to know that they lived through the COVID years of education. But the thing that sticks out, and I've talked to them about it, is their connections are with certain teachers, certain educators that made a difference in their lives. And so I promise you're making more of a difference than you think you are. And we've got all sorts of stuff, you know, political battles being fought around us, and education becomes the football being punted back and forth in that. But at the end of the day, it's about the kids. That's why we get into this. And I promise you're making more of a difference than you think you are. From a parent, I say that just definitively, authoritatively. So thank you all. Hey, let's conclude. Let's give our panelists a big round of applause. Thank you so much. You came so prepared with so much information. There were so many ideas that were shared. Hopefully you captured them. Reach out to our panelists if you want to follow up. We have recorded this and we'll send out a link with the recording of it. And then last but not least, thank you to our attendees for showing up. You're doing fantastic work. Thank you so much for showing up, being a part of this. Go have a great weekend. Eat some good food, hang out with somebody that you like, and listen to some good music. And that's all I've got. I'm going to play us out with